All right, now for the third player that Barnes University selected in this 2026 NFL draft, none other than defensive back Keionte Scott. Now, for those that don't know what this is exactly, this is the video series where I, Charles Barnes, go through all of the players that I was selected in real time that may be similar to what the Titans did or may not be similar to what the Titans did. Now, obviously, with this 60th pick, I chose to go in a different direction. But before we get into the evaluation, for the first time viewers, I'd like to introduce myself so you guys can know the messenger. I'm Charles Barnes at BU_scouting on most social media platforms. Have a background in recruiting in collegiate front offices. I have a background in coaching in basketball and football. Took GM and scouting courses, and I even admit that I was a PFF data collector. Also, I've kept up with 10 plus years of correct evaluations, hit rates for Titan centric stuff, scheme and just suggestions overall, and the hit rate is high, as well as my free agency suggestions. So, a person that believes in accountability and obviously process and getting better over time, that's who's speaking. But let's get to that pick. So, I talked about it in the previous video, talking about where the Titans pivoted with Keldrick Falk. By the way, you can also look at my video series talking about who the Titans selected and all the good stuff that the fans that are not Charles Barnes related subscribers want to listen to. But the people who care about what I have to say and where I would have pivoted had I had the opportunity, this is the video for you. So now, it makes it difficult for people who do the practice that I do, like the accountability practice, making selections in real time, because it goes by what the Titans' plan is, right? Because I wasn't going to trade up to 31 for any player at that point in this draft class. I wasn't going to trade up to 60 for any player in this draft class. And what happened, right? So you gave away pick, a good pick. You moved up 4 spots, but you gave up 64 spots from the fourth round to the fifth round, right? You dropped 64 spots. You gave up 101, the first pick of the first round to start off day three. Um, you and then when you moved up to 60, you gave away I think it was a fifth, right? So you had I would have been much more interested in packaging 142 and 144 to move up higher or into the mid fourth round or late fourth round or something like that to get a guy, which I probably would have, and the player would have been Bryce Lance. For me personally in my draft. So my first two players I selected Sonny Styles at pick 4. Pick 31, I would have picked Emmanuel Pregnon. And then with this 60th pick, I would have picked defensive back Keionte Scott. He was a guy that was sitting there that had multi-positional value. Obviously, a cornerback, nickelback, but I think coaches are more privy to him being a safety near the box, making tackles, being physical, using that skill set a little bit more at a natural position for him than being out in space as a nickel corner, having to cover a lot of the shiftier guys. And that's okay, right? He was my safe. He ended up being my safety 5, safety 6, not even playing the position, just projecting the skill set. And then he was my cornerback 8 overall. And I just felt like the value right there is super potent. I think that with the Tennessee Titans, obviously they like Marcus Harris. Alontae Taylor could play nickel, but they're talking about moving him outside or being an outside corner. So getting Keionte Scott, adding him to that DB room in general, just adds positional flexibility. And then at the bare minimum, he's an awesome gunner. He'd be an awesome gunner and just a hitter on the kick coverage units in general. So that's where I would have pivoted. Um, Obviously, there's some stuff, like I mentioned, with his coverage and space and instincts and stuff like that. That would be the concerns for a player like that. But I already talked about who the Tennessee Titans ended up selecting. Go and check that video out. But as for me, that's where I would have pivoted. That's where I would have went. And it's really hard to get off of that because it started to get very weird at certain spots to where any real selection that you would have made at 60 might have been an overdraft. The only thing I could think of was like quarterback. If you wanted to just go ahead and get like one of these quarterbacks, I think it was too high for a running back at that time, a little bit too rich. Any wide receiver during that time was a little bit too rich. Tight ends was too rich. Tackle got kind of murky. Um, it's a very tough spot, and I feel like 60 was a good spot to get a multi-positional um, position that's of value, and it's a need for the Tennessee Titans, and none other than Keionte Scott was sitting right there for BU.